taking a step back. We've looked in previous weeks at the story of the northern kingdom of Israel up to its collapse and destruction by the Assyrian Empire. We've seen how the stories of Elijah and Elisha fit into these turbulent times. And this week we're taking a step back and focusing on the southern kingdom of Judah, centered around its capital, Jerusalem, and how things progressed there after the division of the kingdom in the reign of Rehoboam, right up until the city of Jerusalem is conquered by the Babylonian Empire. Whereas in the case of the northern kingdom of Israel, our author would rate every single king as doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, especially because none of them stepped back and departed from Jeroboam's idolatrous practices at Bethel and Dan. In the case of Judah, there are mixed verdicts. Some kings are described as doing evil in the eye of the Lord, but we do find some kings who are said to have done good in the eye of the Lord, and even various levels of quality in that category. We have a few kings who, as we're told, started off well, very well, but ended badly. But perhaps almost hidden between the lines of the story is the fact that even when kings came through with strong reforms, such as Hezekiah and Josiah, the people were soon reverted to their idolatrous ways, in a sense that even when a good came in and changed practices, this didn't go deep down into the hearts of people, didn't bring long-standing transformation, which led to the inevitable exile at the hand of the Babylonians.
The foolishness of Rehoboam, which caused the nation to divide, led to a disastrous reign. He actively promoted idolatry and led the people away from the Lord. He became a vassal of Shishak, Pharaoh of Egypt, whom he had to pay off with the temple gold, which was replaced by bronze.
Rehoboam's son, Abijah, continued to lead the people away from the Lord. He also was engaged in constant war with Jeroboam, although he was able to achieve some victories.
Asa was the first great reformer king. For much of his reign he was faithful to the Lord, and got rid of the idols and foreign priests. His faithfulness to God also extended as far as deposing his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother for promoting the worship of foreign idols. However, he does not get full-hearted approval from the author of Kings, as he allowed the high places to remain, presumably to promote the local worship of the Lord. Sadly, Asa's reign did not end well. When under attack from Baasha, king of Israel, he turned to the king of Syria rather than the Lord for help, paying him off with gold from the temple. God sent the prophet Hanani to rebuke him, and Asa had the prophet arrested. We are also told that at the end of his reign Asa oppressed some of his own people, but not told how.
Asa's descendants followed the policy of an ever-closing relationship with the house of Omri, which ruled over the northern kingdom of Israel, and that's the house of the notorious villain Ahab. And very much you get the impression that Judah is the minor partner, the junior partner in his relationship. At times they behave almost as a vassal state of the house of Omri. And in fact, this is a policy which will almost lead to the extermination of the house of David.
Under Jehoshaphat, we see Judah briefly turn to the Lord. He followed his father Asa in being faithful to God and sent teachers to villages and towns of Judah to teach the people the law, and judges to judge according to the law of the Lord. God granted him victories over surrounding nations. However, to the end of his reign, sought proximity with the house of Omri. Jehoshaphat is drawn into the battle which leads to Ahab's death, and receives prophetic condemnation. He then seeks an alliance with Ahab's son Ahaziah to build a fleet of ships. He is again rebuked by a prophet, and the ships are destroyed on their first journey.
Sadly, Jehoshaphat's son and grandson followed the ways of the house of Omri. Jehoram married Ahab's daughter Athaliah and followed Ahab's sinful practices. Judah lost control of Edom in this period. Jehoram has the dubious distinction of receiving a letter of condemnation from Elijah. Ahaziah was also closely allied with the house of Omri, and was murdered by Jehu when he was killing off Ahab's descendants.
Athaliah, Ahab's daughter, seeks to take advantage of Ahaziah's death and carries out a coup. She seeks to exterminate the house of David, but Joash survives, rescued by an aunt and hidden in the temple complex. From a New Testament perspective, we can see this as an attempt to kill the Messiah's line, and thus negate the promises to Abraham and David.
Athaliah promoted idol worship and seems to have built a temple to Baal in Jerusalem. When Joash is 7, the high priest Jehoiada leads a counter-coup and makes Joash king.
While Jehoiada was alive, Joash was wholehearted in his devotion to the Lord, and eliminated Baal worship from Jerusalem. His most striking legacy was the reformation of the temple. However, after the death of Jehoiada, Joash and the people, almost inexplicably, turned away from the Lord to other gods. Things got so bad that Joash went as far as to put Jehoiada's son Zechariah, a prophet, to death for rebuking him. As a punishment, Judah is defeated in battle by Syria. In response, Joash's own officials assassinate him.
After the false dawn of Joash's reign, Judah muddles along. Like his father, Amaziah starts off faithful to the Lord. However, after the Lord gave him victory over the Edomites, he turned to idol worship and foolishly provoked Israel into battle and suffered a devastating defeat. Like his father, his reign ends with his murder at the hand of his officials. His son Azariah, also known as Uzziah, reigns for over 50 years. He is faithful in his service to the Lord throughout his life. However, after God gave him victory over his enemies, became proud. He was struck with a skin disease when he ignored priestly warnings and sought to offer incense in the temple. He co-reigned with his son Jotham after this. Jotham was also faithful to the Lord, even after his father's death. However, we are warned that the people still served other gods during his reign, preparing the way for the apostasy to follow.
The rise of the Assyrian Empire, which actually brought the end of the northern kingdom of Israel, brought an existential crisis to Judah for once. For now, actually, it was possible to envisage a total destruction and elimination of the nation. Sadly, the first king to deal with the Assyrian menace would not be proved up to the task.
Ahaz was unfortunate to reign as the Assyrian Empire expanded its power. He was not up to the challenge as he did not turn to the Lord for support. The crisis first rears its head when an alliance by the kings of Israel and Syria tries to force Judah into battle against Assyria. Isaiah urges Ahaz to trust in the Lord, for the two kings will fall, but instead Ahaz turns to the Assyrian Empire for support and Judah becomes a vassal state. Ahaz turns his back on the Lord and completely embraces Assyrian culture. He closes the Jerusalem temple and installs idols all over Jerusalem. He even commits the greatest abomination of all and offers one of his sons as a sacrifice.
How should we judge Hezekiah's reign? The books of Kings and Chronicles provide a positive assessment. They focus on his radical reforms, eliminating idol worship, devoting the temple to the Lord and celebrating the Passover. They emphasize his faith, turning to the Lord in prayer when the city of Jerusalem was surrounded by the armies of the Assyrian Emperor Sennacherib. This resulted in a plague striking the army and its sudden retreat. They also emphasize Hezekiah's trust in the Lord to gain remission from a deadly disease and 15 more years of life. While recognizing the positive aspects of Hezekiah's reign, Isaiah emphasizes the foolishness of his military strategy, allying himself with other nations. Although Jerusalem was spared, the rest of the country was devastated by Sennacherib's invasion, which was a consequence of Hezekiah disobeying God's word and allying himself with Egypt.
Manasseh can claim to be the worst king of them all. His reign was marked by social injustice, bloodshed, and idol worship. Even the Jerusalem temple became devoted the temple to idol worship. Things were so bad under his reign that Judah is seen to have crossed the point of no return, and exile became inevitable. 2 Chronicles describes Manasseh being exiled to Assyria, where he turns to the Lord and attempts reforms on his return to Judah. However, it ends up being a case of too little, too late. The reign of his son Amon is barely a footnote. He continued in his father's sins and was murdered by his officials.
Suddenly, out of the blue, we have a truly great king, Josiah. After the reader has been told that the exile had become inevitable, we see the emergence of a king equal to David in his wholehearted devotion to God. Josiah benefited from the decline of the Assyrian Empire and was able to extend the borders of Judah to include much of Israel. During temple renovations, the priests discovered a copy of the Book of the Law. Realizing how far the people had strayed from the Lord, Josiah set about a radical reform, rededicating Judah to its covenant with God. However, his reforms did not have deep roots, and after his death the people would revert to their old ways. Nonetheless, he was spared from seeing God's punishment in his lifetime.
Sadly, Josiah becomes entangled in a conflict between Egypt and the emerging Babylonian Empire. He is killed at the Battle of Megiddo, trying to stop the king of Egypt marching through the land on the way to fight the Babylonians. This marks the end of the existence of Judah as an independent state. The end, when it comes quickly.
In the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiakim king of Judah, in the year Marduk became king of Babylon, he released Jehoiakim king of Judah from prison. He did this on the 27th day of the 12th month. He spoke kindly to him and gave him a seat of honor higher than those of the other kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiakim put aside his prison clothes and for the rest of his life ate regularly at the king's table. Day by day the king gave Jehoiakim a regular allowance as long as he lived.
In many ways, it seems that the story of Judah has ended the same way as the story of Israel. That despite a few good kings, that despite a few times of national reform and revival, the people have ended up mired in idolatry and injustice and suffered the same fate, defeat by their enemies and exile. And it seems that we just come across this, what might seem like just like a footnote, a minor detail that the ex-king Jehoiakim is now no longer in chains in Babylon, but he has been released from chains, and though still in exile, he has better circumstances, is even paid an allowance. But for the author of Kings, that is a key important detail, because it is a sign that the house of David has not been wiped out. From a New Testament perspective, we might say this is important because it is evidence that the line of the Messiah continues. But it points to what perhaps has been a major theme of the Old Testament story we've been tracing so far, that hope lies not in the power or merits of Israel. Hope lies not in them being able to make strategic alliances with other nations. Hope will come from God's grace, God's power, his mercy, his faithfulness to his promises and his covenant, And Israel and the people of God are to hold on to this.